Och det är Kim Windvogel. Did I pronounce it right? Windvogel. Almost, thank you. Wonderful. Welcome up on stage.
Hello everyone, hello, welcome. I'm very happy and honored to be standing here today presenting our amazing guest, Kim Windvogel. Kim is a UN fellow and one of the founders of the South African organization Fem Projects, and also the author of this amazing book, They Call Me Queer. But first of all, I would just like to introduce My Period is Awesome. My name is Louise and I work at My Period is Awesome. We gather local organizations and activists from around the world to showcase their important work to inspire others to follow. So we provide capacity building to grassroots activists and offer them access to an international network of expert influencers, policymakers, and that is what we're here to do today. So I would like to give a warm welcome to you, Kim Windvogel.
Hello, everyone. I love how each new person that I meet here in Sweden pronounces my surname differently. So I'll say that my name is Kim Windvogel, and I'm from Cape Town, South Africa, and I am #1 queer as fuck. Not enough people are swearing in this space. I feel like I should swear it out. Okay, so when I was 21, I realized and accepted that I was queer and that I was not straight. Although I should have known by the age of 11, because that was the age that the movie Miss Congeniality came out. Do you remember that film with Sandra Bullock? And every time she would come on screen, I would have this urge inside of me and I would just feel something for this woman, and I didn't really understand what was going on because no one was really telling me that it is okay to love people who is not supposedly the opposite sex. Anyway, so fast forward 10 years after that, and I bumped into this person who was not a man or a cisgendered heterosexual man, and my body responded in the same way that it responded at that time, and it responded in the same way that it would generally respond to men. And so I was kind of very conflicted. I was like, what is going on? I don't really know where to go to. I don't have friends that I can speak to. And although being queer in South Africa at the time had been legal for about 7 or 8 years, no one was really talking about it. And no one was creating a space for me where I felt safe to explore my sexuality or my gender identity and the expression thereof. So what do you do as a millennial to find support? You go online. So I went online and I was typing in, you know, what does it mean when you like someone who is not the opposite sex? You know, I was trying to find personal narratives that would make me feel seen and where I could see my story reflected. I didn't get a lot of South African content. The most content that I got was from the States, and it wasn't people that I could really see myself in. So I went looking, and I think most of the work that I found in South Africa was very academic. So I had to read these stories and these essays with a dictionary in order to understand what queerness is. And that's where I decided, okay, I'm going to start a blog, and I'm going to start writing personal narrative essays about my sexual identity and my orientation, about how I struggle with my gender identity and expression, and I'm going to make it okay for people to come to my blog, to come to my Instagram page, to come to wherever I am online, and to talk to each other, and to give support to each other in that way. And that's another reason why I started the organization that I run back home, which is called Fem Projects. Freedom of Education Motivates Empowerment, because we try to create spaces where teenagers feel safe to say, hey, I'm attracted to other women, or hey, I can't really identify with my body, or I don't really know what's going on. Can you give me language? Can you help me understand? Can we have this conversation? So all of the work that I do is linked, basically to try and help create spaces where people can explore and reflect on their identities. So yeah, I then did the blog, and then fast forward 5 years after that, I became a UN fellow through the organization called Outright Action International in New York City. And there I met someone called Azina Muhammad. They compiled the book called She Called Me Women, Nigeria's Queer Women Speak. And throughout the year that we were together, we would have these conversations, and I said to them, you know, I am so interested, and I've been interested in compiling stories, and I've been doing it online, but you are propelling me to do it offline and to create a space where all South Africans can come together and speak about our experiences as queer people. Now, I don't know how much you know about the history or about the context of South Africa, but it's extremely racial country. Apartheid ended about 25 years ago. That's when democracy came, and we're supposedly one now and we're all equal. But that is not really the case back home. I've got fellow South African here, and I think they can attest to that. So a lot of the movements in South Africa, especially when we talk about the queer movement, has been whitewashed. You don't really see queer people of color visibilized, even though a lot of us were at the front lines, and a lot of our queer elders were at the front lines of the queer revolution in my country. So I set out with the intention to create a book that would center the voices of the most marginalized in the queer community. Because I need you to remember that I'm not saying that white queer people are not marginalized or oppressed, but there are people within marginalized communities that are invisibilized and intentionally eliminated from the conversation. So I set out to create a book, They Called Me Queer, that would center those voices, center Black, transgender women, transgender people, center sex workers who are queer, center these voices that we don't always hear, even though they are mostly at the front lines of all revolutions all around the globe. So it's called They Called Me Queer. It took us about 16 months to put this together. We have stories of everything. I think there's one thing that I need to mention. A lot of the times when queer people of color's voices are included in mainstream media, it focuses on the trauma that we go through. It's always trauma, sadness, it is intense pain. Now, as much as that is something that is very true, and that is something that threads us all together as queer people of color, we are multifaceted, complex human beings, and we are capable of real love, capable of true joy. We are capable of success in a society that really doesn't love us. And I wanted to create a space where people can come and write whatever the fuck they wanted to write about. If you wanted to write about polyamory, that's my piece, page 80, called To Poly or Not to Poly, just by the way, then you could write about that. If you wanted to write about your work as a sex worker, you could write about that. Anything under the sun. I didn't want to censor anyone in this book, and that was very, very important to me. So we created that book, and I hope that people who buy this book and who read this book, whether you are queer, whether you are not queer, whatever type of person you are, I hope that you can see yourself in these stories. And I hope that you can reflect on these stories and understand our context a little bit better from where you are here in Gothenburg. So I'm going to do some reading. Can I do a reading? Okay. I'm going to start with something that alludes to sex. Okay, so this is from my piece, and it is called To Poly or Not to Poly. So I'm just going to go for it. She paces up and down and tells me to say stop whenever I'm ready. I frown because I'm curious. She hasn't even touched my body, and even if she did, why would I tell her to stop? But I decide to play along, and I obey her request. Stop. The word escapes from my mouth, and after I ring the command, she suddenly stops pacing and walks towards me with a book in hand, one finger wedged into its sleeves. And I wonder how long I have to wait before she does that to me. She opens the book and starts to read from right to left. It's Arabic, And although I do not understand a word she is saying, my clitoris nods in agreement to every sound she's making. It's quite difficult to translate, but it's a good one for you, she says, and raises her pierced eyebrow at me. You said stop at the right time. I impatiently wave away a need for an explanation while she mutters a short, inaudible translation of a poet and they grapple with life. I pay it little mind. I want her to tell me to say stop again. I want her to insert that finger inside that booked sleeve again. And I want my clitoris to nod in agreement with every sound she makes from right to left again. I want to imagine her doing this to me over and over again. And then I want to share a piece, a short little excerpt from an essay called Harnessing the Power of Queerness by an incredibly amazing writer called Luando Scott from South Africa. This piece is just about how they matured into their queerness. As time went by, I started maturing into my queerness, meeting different people, reading queer books, kissing boys, studying sociology. And I started realizing that my queerness was in actual fact an advantage. It was, in certain situations, a power that I could harness. It was something I could use to both feel my way through the world, but also a tool to question the taken for granted structures of the world. My queerness was turning out to be an asset, accumulating worth as I experienced more and accumulated more knowledge. It has enabled me to question things that others take for granted, like ideas around gender and gender performance, as I had my first-hand experience in how my gender had been policed throughout my life. My queerness enables me to see the world differently compared to many of my contemporaries who are heterosexual, but also those who are cisgender homosexual. Being queer enables me to imagine a different world where alternative genders and sexualities are not things to be policed, judged, and demonized, but are to be embraced, encouraged, and explored. Queerness was a starting point of imagination, of fostering different ideas of how to be in the world and what it means to exist in it. I realized that queerness was the opening up of the world where I pondered, what is normal? I want to just conclude in saying that the fact that, in South Africa now, being a part of the LGBTQIA community has been legal for, almost 14 years now. In 2013, when I realized and accepted that I was queer, I went to look for content and relatable content, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't go to my elders to talk about it because everything is happening hush-hush. If you're queer, it's fine. We just don't want to know about it. Do it behind closed doors. Nobody wants to speak about the fact that there are more sexual orientations than just being heterosexual. And I think moving forward, what is very, very important, even if you are a heterosexual parent, it doesn't matter who you are and what your sexual orientation is. Create a space where kids feel safe to come and speak to you, where we can communicate with each other. And if you are not comfortable with that, make sure that you place people in your kids' lives or in young people's lives where they can go to and feel safe and feel held. There are too many of us who think of suicide. And you see that in that book. Too many of us contemplate suicide. Too many contemplate running away from home. And some of us don't even have the option to think about it. Some of us get evicted from our homes. So these are things that we need to look at as society. How can we change society to be open and more loving and more accepting? I hate the word tolerant. I almost used it. I was going to be very upset with myself. But how can we create a society where people aren't afraid to love who they want to love, fuck who they want to fuck, be who they want to be? And I think that's what I want people to take away from this talk. It's so simple that it actually hurts that I have to say it. But yeah, come and find me at store H01 37. My period is awesome. It's just around the corner. There'll be books. We can chat about queerness. If you're queer, yay. Yeah, come and find me. Thank you very much.